Hmm? The boss is here. What do you have?
Sorry, no, supervisor.
What is this?
Okay, you can't cry so that you get him back for you.
Mr. Collins case. Ah! Finally, we have caught up with you. You are under arrest, Mr. Collins.
Officer.
He's a woman.
I'm innocent. When you came in and you saw how they were maltreating me, so they said that they were talking to my wife, trying to convince her to take a restraining order against me.
Somebody said that it's okay. It's okay. Explain the question. Sorry. That's the best move to make. So that you won't kill her as you came to her.
This man, I don't get it back because of what he did. This man, no,
We knew when they reported this case and you ran away. Mr. Collins.
You have no mouth. No. What?
You keep quiet. Get report of your men right now and
What is this I want? This I want to end.
Come on, please, come down. Shut your wrist.
Hello and welcome. This is NTA Tuesday Live and I'm Cyril Stober. Tonight we have a second part on flood control and management. Now, flooding has continued to wreak havoc across several communities in the country. But no matter the flooding situation, rainfall is critical to food. And just as many farmers are already counting their blessings, many communities devastated by massive flooding are counting losses. But what can be done in the interim to ensure this major environmental challenge does not degenerate? And what are the long-term or permanent measures to contain this annual problem? Tonight, The federal government's directives on capacity response and other interventions by key players in the environment sector will be leading the discussion. But before we go into it, let's get to see this report by correspondent Musa Baba Aliu.
This scenario occurred 2 weeks ago, not Nigeria, but in a community in neighboring Cameroon, and this in Niger Republic also, where intense rainfall have affected communities in the country. What has this got to do with Nigeria? One may ask, and should Nigeria be worried? Yes, Nigeria should be worried as flood waters from Niger Republic and Cameroon will empty into River Niger and Benue. The overflowing of the rivers has often been due to release of water from the two neighboring countries. Another major threat is the release of excess water from the 3 major hydro dams and other reservoirs in the country. Already, Kainji and Jaba hydro dams are spilling with large volumes of water. This is the situation in Jigawa State 2 days ago. The state is one of the states worst hit by flood this year, followed by Lagos. Jigawa and 33 other states of the Federation facing social and economic challenges associated with floods. 2 issues were identified as factors responsible for the flooding. The first one is the natural factor caused by the high volume of rainfall triggered by climate change. The other factor is man's activities on the environment. Traditional rulers, the emirs of Yauri and Esunupe, have stressed the need for attitudinal change in the way environmental matters are being handled by both government and citizens.
Where we have people residing, their population dense, are very heavy, there is need to plan proper movement and re-establishing these communities in a very little bit upper sort of away from the coast of river, and we suggested this idea, and we made proposal to the studies to the appropriate authorities, and there was even a plan, like in the area of Modegi, in other areas that are going to flood. There was a plan to re-establish the community, the Modegi community, to the another site away from the river bank. And work started initially, but along the line stopped.
That's why I mentioned dredging of the dams, Goronyo and Baklori, because the bottom have been sediments of sand and clay. So little water will just overflow. But if they are dredging, the rivers will be deep and they'll will be able to carry a large amount of water. Most importantly, there must be free flow of water. I know the dam, for example, Chenju Dam, they can control the amount of water we have. And I know that in the watch out, if there's serious problem, very serious problem, they will open up. But when they open up, downstream will also be affected. So the best thing is to warn people, to educate people, to sensitize people about all this flooding.
Environmental experts are of the view that Nigeria has no cause to be taken off guard of flood annually. Who is to blame? What is the role of government agencies like the Hydrological Services, Nigeria Meteorological Agency, NIMET, and the National Emergency Management Agency, NEMA, in mitigating the impacts of flood? Musa Aliyu.
All right, let's get to meet our guests tonight on the program. I'd like to welcome to tonight's program Professor Mansour Bako Matazu, is the Director General CEO of NIMET, that's the Nigerian Meteorological Agency. Thanks for being with us here tonight.
Thanks so much for having me.
All right. Let me also welcome, he was here with us last week, but he's here again, Engineer Clement Nze, Director General, Nigeria Hydrological Services Agency. Thanks for being here again.
Thank you. It's my pleasure to be here again.
All right. And tonight we have joining us from Kano Center, Kano Station, we have Governor Abdullahi Umar Ganduje, who is going to be part of this discussion. Mr. Governor, thanks for being with us tonight. Also, in our Kano station, we have the Director General of the National Emergency Management Agency, Mustafa Habib Ahmed. Thank you for joining us tonight.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Okay. Also, let me also welcome to tonight's program Kano Ahmed Abubakar, who's joining us via Zoom. He is a geoscientist, the fellow Nigerian Mining and Geoscience Society. Thanks for being here tonight. Yes, thanks for joining us once more. Thank you. Well, as usual, when it gets to that time, we will open the phone lines, and that means you can join in the discussion in the studio. We'll refresh your memory on the procedure at that time. But let's come back to the present now. And since our last program on flooding and flood control, some disturbing developments have taken place. So we will start off this conversation on that premise. Let me start with Engineer Clement Nze, the Director General of Nigeria Hydrological Services Agency. Since we spoke last week, we understand that one of the fears then was release of water from Lagdo Dam. Has that happened?
Certainly, that has been the fear. Because if you look at what is happening within the country in terms of amount of rainfall, the devastation that comes with the flood, we are wishing that Cameroon, the Lagdo Dam in Cameroon, won't spill this year. It spilled in 2012. It spilled in 2019, and because of the fear we are having as an hydrological agency, we kept in touch with Cameroon authorities with regard to the dam to know whether they will spill water. Unfortunately for us, when I spoke to them last on the 14th, it was just prodding them because they are supposed to, on their own, alert us being downstream of the Benue sub-basin, and also having a subsisting memorandum of understanding between the two countries that in the event of release of water from the dam, they should notify Nigeria ahead of time. However, they didn't do that. It was when I called on the 14th, then they informed me we opened a dam yesterday, that was 13th, at 8:50 a.m. in the morning. And are spilling water at the rate of 615 cubic meters of water per second. So what we feared has really come on us in terms of Lagdo Dam being open.
What are the likely effects of this now?
We already have it. Uroboki is in Adamawa State. That is the first point of measurement, our own measurement, of the flow of the Benue as it enters Nigeria. The immigration office in Uroboki, is a border. I think it's what I trekked it across to the other side of the Cameroon. It had been overtaken by flood. Then coming to Numa, Yola, several communities have already been overtaken. That's the implication. And as we speak, in Makode, so many places have been overtaken. Like the Benue State University, Ara Teaching Hospital also. About 2 kilometers, both banks, other banks of the river, has been inundated in Makode. And we don't know how long it is going to last.
The water is still flowing from
yes, there is a flow, Lagdo, and again within our own catchment within the country, we have experienced it. My colleague will be saying that anyway. Above normal, in terms of rainfall we have been experiencing, have been above normal in many places. That contributed a lot too. And then Cameroon, the Lagdo Dam in Cameroon, now open, aggravated what you have inside.
Professor Matali, you predicted that this year was going to witness large rainfall. But could you have imagined that we would go down the same path again?
Thank you very much. Good evening, Nigerians. If you recall vividly, early part of this year, precisely in February, we released our seasonal climate prediction by our Honorable Minister, in which we gave detailed description of the rainfall pattern imminent for the country, and all the indicators showing normal in some places, especially in the south, and above normal substantially in the north central and northern fringes of the country is what we are witnessing presently. And globally also there's a trigger of climate change which now tries to amplify those extreme events in form of high intensity rains that persist for so many hours and days, as we have seen in most parts of the north, including Abuja. And this has generated a lot of high soil moisture. As we are talking presently in real time, soil moisture condition over the northern parts of the country is almost 100%. So any drop of water in form of rainfall will entails in runoff, and that results to floods. The season is really an active season. Globally, we are experiencing what is called La Nina tripartite a deep one, that for 3 consecutive years there is an indicator of that determines season in most parts of the world, and which is called ENSO, El Nino Southern Oscillation. It's either a warmer ocean or a cooler ocean or neutral ocean. So since 2020 to date, we've been experiencing La Nina. 2020 we had one, 2021 last year we had a La Nina, and including this year also a La Nina. And a La Nina event globally, especially in this part of the world, enhances rainfall activities, and that is what we are seeing. We have seen this happening in most parts of Asia, including Europe and parts of North and Southern America. So we are experiencing a lot of rainfall activities as a result of the prevailing climatic condition, in addition also to the escalation by climate change. And on our own in NIMET, we've been following up with updates in 3 days in what we call high impact weather impact-based forecast, and we've been releasing this to both NISA, NEMA, and so many other enabling organizations in order to prepare and also alert public on some of this.
Is this likely to continue?
Definitely. The ITD that demarcates the rainfall season and also the zones is presently up north beyond Nigeria. It's in Niger Republic. So the active rainfall zones still lies in the north, extreme northern Nigeria, and north central. And in the next 72 hours, it will begin its southward migration, and that will collapse and enhance a lot of rainfall activities. And that will begin the cessation period, which is also associated with high intensity but short duration rainfall events. And this is also a trigger for flash floods, coupled with what my brother mentioned from NISA, that we also having riverines flooding, river bed, channels swelling up as a result of release of water. I also learned even from him that even Kainji and Jaba dams also have been opened because before even the coming of the water from Niger Republic, we already have some triggers within the local tributaries in the country, because all these rivers, they are the collectors which collects this rainfall. And due to deforestation, most of these river channels have been silted up, and that affects their original size and shape, and so little amount of rainfall will generate into overland flow and subsequently floods.
All right. Not a very fine picture, really, but let's go over to Kano studio, and let's get to talk to Dr. Abdullahi Umar Ganduje, the governor of Kano State. Mr. Governor, it would seem from all the explanations and from what's been happening on ground that northern Nigeria is hard hit by these devastating floods. How are you coping with this situation in Kano? Let's hear your experience. I'm afraid we have some challenges with audio from our Kano studio. I will fix that in a moment, and we'll get back to Governor Ganduje and, of course, the Director General of NEMA, who's there with him. But let's see if we can get the geoscientist online now. I guess we can get him on Zoom. Yes. You just had the explanations by both DGs of NIMET and NISA. What you make of all of this? If you can hear me, could you unmute your audio? Perhaps that's the problem. Could you unmute your audio? All right. Okay. Oh dear. Can you unmute your audio if you can hear me?
I'm hearing you.
All right. Fine. Now we can hear you. Please go ahead.
Okay. I said from the presentation, it has been very excellent. We've been generating the data as expected, and they've been doing that synergy in terms of the NISA and then the NIMET. And from their presentation, what I can deduce from there is from the River flank, there was a release of water from Lago Dam. And ordinarily, when they constructed that dam, from their presentation downstream, which has not been constructed. And from their presentation, they talked about speaking to Cameroon before they release their water. So I think the whole of this thing is we have to imbibe the issue of water diplomacy. Water diplomacy in the sense that if you look at what is happening in Ethiopia and then in terms of Egypt, from Ethiopia to Egypt, and Ethiopia wants to dam, and Egypt is fighting them. But in our own case, we don't want even the release of the water, or the water they should be able to tell us before they release the water. So the whole thing is that we have to imbibe more energy. That's one, so that before they release the water, we should be able to do some sort of mitigation situation. That's one. Secondly, in terms of the fiscal structure in this country, that we have to start doing the right thing. And then by keying into certain major projects, like the Prof said, the issue of climate change. Now, the federal government has given a sort of an emergency in terms of climate change by even appointing a Director General, Dr. Salisu, to in charge of climate change. So I think what they will have to do now, we have to start not later than immediately, to start thinking about how within the funds of the climate change, whether we start constructing those structures that have not been constructed. Then that is the starting point from the flank of the River Benue from Lagdo Dam. Then from the River Niger, it is in-house. It is in-house in the sense that we have from the presentation of the NISA DG, we have two dams, one in Jeba and one in Kanji. So that is intra within the country. So information supposed to have been given, because from what we have observed, the release was done around Saturday. So ordinarily, for the past 2 weeks, since we have resident time, and we are able to know at what time this water will have filled to the brim. So it shouldn't be any surprise. And unfortunately, from the presentation and then the report, that the flood is so far concentrated within the northern part of the country. Yes, it is concentrated within the part of the country because we are coming, because the water is traveling down to the confluence in Lokoja. Eventually, it will spill. That is where there is a sort of vegetative condition in such a way that the kind of the basin they are having there, water coming downstream. So the impact, yes, it has already happened upstream from the up north, it is going to happen very soon down southern part of Nigeria. So the take home is that water diplomacy, construction of those structures in the appropriate places, and then be able to take data from the presentation of NIMET. We have micro tributaries. That is where the main issue is. State government is supposed to key in such a way that while we are doing the study catchment by catchment, we'll be able to do detailed studies, detailed data, and then be able to liaise with the state government in such a way that they can be able to start at in their own pace based on the catchment, so that eventually we'll be able to reduce this kind of potential dangers.
I've always wanted to ask this. How good is a control and management mechanism? It would seem that all the time it's just reactive. And what do we have in place to properly manage, being proactive to manage the situation?
Okay, I can say, if I may start, that the early warning value chain, which we now call value cycle, we have different categories of stakeholders. And for NIMET, we sit as the forecaster and provider of early warning, same as NISA. You will explain further. And this we now release these products, services, information, and advisories to enabling NDAs at both the national and subnational at state level. So these are enablers so that they consume in different sectors such as agriculture, water resources, including also construction and other transportation sector. So this now consume and release and relay the information to the various users. And these users are not, these are people living at the community level. So what we are having at the federal level, we are having an effective integrated flood management system whereby we have a seamless flow of information. For NIMET, we released the forecast as early as February, which give about 4 months to 5 months because the season begins in the south by March and in June in the north. So if you give even for your value and forecast for February, you have 1 month lead time for the south and about 5 months also for the north. We people and MDAs need to integrate their actions and activities that the business is no more as usual, especially with climate change. So in agriculture, we have what they call climate smart agricultural practices. And we have run analysis with, for NIMET, we have over 130 years climatic data. And we have run local analysis and also got all the indicators that climate change is happening locally in Nigeria. And some of these indicators, I will give 2 examples that the length of the rainy season is shortening while the intensity of the rainfall is increasing. So my brother from NISA will explain further the implication of this. That means we have high volume of water that fall within limited time. That will trigger floods and in form of flash flood, and then also rivers swelling up, and then also for the reservoirs, they will be recharged quickly, and definitely to safeguard them, there must be releases of this. I think we need to have more effective coordination between the national agencies and state level, which will now relay this information as quickly as possible to the local communities. And in that, with NEMA and NIMET, NISA, we've been meeting on monthly basis and generated flood risk maps. NISA came out with their forecast around April, May, and coupled with ours in February. So NEMA brought out detailed vulnerability risks and areas that are vulnerable to this flood. So I think the missing link here is compliance at the grassroots level.
Well, when Kano was talking, he started off mentioning something about water diplomacy. Have we engaged in that? And if we have, why would it seem that there isn't a seamless communication between Nigeria and Cameroon? Now, That is on the one hand. On the other, we also have our own challenges here with the heavy rainfall that's been predicted. You had the DG NIMET say that the period is getting shorter, but
Heavy amount of rain.
Yes.
No, thank you so much. You're talking about the issue of diplomacy. Of course, I'm aware of what happened, like what the geoscientist said, Kano. When Ethiopia wanted to build their own dam, the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam, Egypt objected to it. There was a series of diplomacy that went on. In fact, one country was ready to go to war. If you do this, we'll go to war. Because Egypt is downstream of Ethiopia, but eventually they resolved. Now, coming back to ours, in the basin, which we call Niger Basin, where Nigeria is situated, there are 9 countries in this basin. Nigeria is the most, if I use the word most disadvantage in quotes, in the sense that we are at the bottom of this basin. The other 8 countries are upstream. Whatever happens there in terms of flooding, Nigeria must receive it. But it could have been an advantage to us if this flood is properly managed. Now, after 2012 flood incident, which was triggered by the rate of water from Lagdo Dam in Cameroon, the 2 countries began to discuss. And then in 2016, His Excellency Paul Biya was in Nigeria to meet with our president, Muhammad Buhari. The 2 countries signed an MOU that in the event you are about to release water, that's Cameroon, notify Nigeria ahead of time. There are 2 infrastructures in Cameroon that are so much critical to Nigeria. One is Lake Nyos. In August 1986, this poisonous lake that has weak embankment exploded and threw so many thousands of cubic meters of poisonous gas into the atmosphere. Then eventually it entered into Kasinala River and then destroyed so many things. That's one of the structures. Second one is the Lagdo Dam. But so far, they've not been able to act according to the letters of that MOU signed in 2016. For instance, in 2019, I was somewhere on an assignment outside Nigeria, and I began to notice that our river, Yola in Adamawa, Numan, they were being submerged. In October, when the rains, gradually have ceased within Nigeria, in northern parts, and I began to call Cameroon. It was not until after about 3 weeks they owned up that we opened our dam October 10th and closed it October 31st, 2019. Now, this one around, see what is happening within us here, within the Nigerian sector in terms of flooding. I knew it would be quite consequential to Nigeria if Cameroon should release water, or if their dam would be overwhelmed to release water. So, we maintained early communication with them, and we were assured in our agency that once they are to release water, they must notify us. It was, unfortunately, they didn't notify us. The time they got in touch with me, I called them back. They said, okay, sorry, we opened our dam yesterday, being 13th. So that is the problem. Respecting, in fact, the Honorable Minister of Water Resources, Engineer Suleiman Adam, had to do a powerful letter to the Honorable Minister of Foreign Affairs in Nigeria for him to communicate with his counterpart in Cameroon as to the reason they have continually failed to act according to the terms. That is, externally. Now, coming back home to Nigeria, there is a missing leg. At the federal level, where you have the forecasting agencies or predicting agencies, there is a seamless way of coordination of activities.
Right.
We coordinate properly. In fact, yesterday also, yes, I was at NEMA event to still discuss further on the implications of the release of water. There were so many agencies that were there. But when it comes to utilizing these products that come out as early as possible from the federal level, the states seem to be the missing leg, the subnationals. Now, what we want to ask, now maybe we are seeing activities, donating relief materials. This person has gone to visit to the site. Maybe say governor has located to social locations. So let us find out what happens between December and maybe March every year. This is the time to take critical look on our environment, to do environmental audit as to what flood has occurred during the flooding season, and then take necessary action ahead of time, not when we're already inside the mess as we are now. We can't do much at this stage. So there's that missing link, utilizing information given out early enough by the states. There's a missing link there.
All right. Now let's try to return to our Kano studio, where Governor Ganduje is, and sitting with him in that studio is the Director General of NEMA. Mr. Governor, if you can hear me, hopefully we've fixed whatever that hitch was to do with your audio. If you can hear me, we had wanted to find out how you're coping in Kano State, the situation in your state, given what we are seeing now, and for the fact that from all indications, northern Nigeria seems to be going through a pretty bad time with flooding.
Very much. I hope you can hear me well now. There's no doubt this year in Kano we have very serious floods in Kano State, which I can classify into two categories. Can you hear me, please? Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Can I
Just
continue?
go ahead.
Well, as I am saying, we have devastating flood effect this year in Kano, which I can categorize into two parts. First is local flooding due to climate change, having rainfall, but due to the activities, human activities, that flood could have been avoided, especially the one that we had last month in Kantinkwari market. Kantinkwari market is a textile market, and there is a big drainage passing through the market. Unfortunately, some people dumped refuse within the drainage, and some people even constructed permanent structures on the runway, I mean on the speed, on the large drainage. So that one blocked the drainage, and there was flood in the market, and many shops were submerged, and many traders lost their wares. That is very unfortunate, and we are still taking data on that. And there is another one that we can call a national flood, if I can describe it as such, because it is as a result of heavy rain that made our two large dams to be full. That is the Tiga Dam and Chalawa Goji Dam. For these two dams, because they were so full, we had to release the water, otherwise the dams would break. And the Federal Minister of Water Resources, in fact, the Minister of Federal Resources was even kind enough. He was here in Kano with us in order to inspect and give us technical advice on what we should do. But unfortunately, the dams were full. We had to release the water, and you know the speed at which the water flows. Many farmlands were submerged, but we have not got any information on the death. And also around the Woodil area, some villages were submerged. Some people are homeless now. We are taking the data, and many people lost their farmlands. So that is the effect of flood that we have this year. For the one within Kano Metropolitan is something that could have been avoided. Already I have inspected the market, and I directed for the demolishing of all the structures on the major drainage into the market. I think we are also taking measures to increase the drainages within the market where we have to demolish some other shops. I think we will be able to take of that. And once we have sanitation program of which cleaning of drainages is involved. Also every year we have an annual cleaning of drainages using self-help groups because we know there are some drainages that every year, because of the drainages are full with silt, with sand, and also some refuse, so every year we have to clean them. But in order to solve the problem, we are reviewing the master plan of Kano Metropolitan, where we identify primary drainages, secondary drainages, and tertiary drainages, and we will be able to effect some demolishing in some areas and construct concrete drainages, and also put some measures so that people will not continue to block such drainages. But because the town is growing big and many people are building houses, so you can find that even the primary drainages are being blocked here and there, and therefore we have to identify, you see, the primary drainages and the secondary drainages and the third drainages, so that we can put that issue to rest. But the other major issue of the dams, and also people building or excavating sand along the river band, that changes the course of the river. That when we are coordinating with the local government to ensure that we stop that, because when the course of the river has been changed, there is no doubt water will flow into farmland and into some villages, and even to some extent it lead to the breakages of some bridges, which is very costly, and sometimes it even costs some people life. And so that issue is an issue that also we have to contend with, but we are dealing with it, working with the local communities. But another problem, that is a national problem or an international problem, that is, building dams along the river bank. All our waters here in Kano, they do not drain into the middle belt of this country. They do not drain into the Niger Delta. Our water here in Kano and our neighboring state, the water flows down to Yobe State, to Borno State, to Niger, to Niger Republic State, down to Lake Chad and along the river. You find that there is no well-coordinated usage of the river across the countries, especially between Nigeria and Niger Republic and Chad Republic. On the other side, between Cameroon and Nigeria, unless if there's a well-coordinated on the usage of the river, construction of dam should be something that is agreed upon by those towns and villages and states along the river, so that if it is absolutely necessary to construct a river, then there should be a well-coordinated on the usage, so that the time when water will be released, there should be information down the stream, so that communities will take measures, will know something to do. So this is a national issue, this is an international issue. So in Kano State, this is what is happening, and these are the measures that we are taking in order to prevent the effect of flood, especially on lives and properties. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Ganduje, giving us a vivid picture of what's been going on in Kano and how it's been addressed from different angles. But let me just go over to the Director General of NEMA, that's Mustafa Habib Ahmad, and I would like to know the mechanism to evacuate people from flood-prone areas, the response to disasters, flood disasters, and what have we learned over the years, and what is our capacity to respond to these devastating floods?
It's something I'll say is extraordinary. The lives lost is about over 300, and over 500,000 people have been displaced. We have been providing relief items to over 130 something thousand already, and over 21,000 households. It's still ongoing. Assessment is ongoing. Today I came to Kano on the spot assessment to assess for myself what is on ground and what has been happening, not just going after the reports. I went to remote villages after Warawa. In fact, our cars got stopped. 3 vehicles got stopped and we had to turn back. The situation is so bad, but what I realized was that there was no even tarred road to where we were. It was a very remote village. But those houses, those villages were living below ground level. All the farmlands are totally destroyed. Relief, we're still piling up relief. Assessment is still ongoing, as I mentioned earlier, but we're still continuing with the assessment and providing relief so far.
At this point, we will take a couple of reports from our correspondents. Let's get to see how the situation is. This first one is from Jigawa State.
A tip of the iceberg, you could see. These are some of the thousands of Jigawa people displaced by flood this year. Although the flood water is receding gradually, however, the difficulties of the affected people linger. They live in fear and anxiety, having lost everything to the disaster. For instance, Kano village in Dusa local government area, one of the communities affected has been deserted because everything, including residential, farmlands and livestock, among other belongings, have been destroyed completely by the disaster. In fact, the flood has left hundreds of thousands homeless, majority of whom are currently taking refuge in schools and uncompleted buildings. A situation that for the state government postponed school resumption for new session. Bala Abdullahi and Isa Muhammad are among the victims badly affected by the devastated flood. They describe their situation as that can better be imagined than described.
I lost my house of more than 7 rooms to the flood. Right now, I and my family, we have nowhere to sleep. The flood has rendered many of us homeless. Currently, we are living in a very uncomfortable condition. But let the government remember our situation.
Beyond the damage done on residential places, the flood also damaged several roads and bridges connecting major towns and villages in Jigawa State. This brought to the fore dangers people are exposed to in their movements using protective ways. So far, local boat mishaps has claimed 14 lives across Jigawa State. Although rehabilitation works have commenced on some roads, experts and public analysts emphasize on the need for a holistic approach to be adopted to promote public safety and disseminate the recurrent flood incidents in the state.
An area is prone to flooding. Even after a long period of time, it will have still come back. So as much as possible, we try to educate people to avoid building along the water pathways, because anything can happen. So, but like I said, it's an issue of climate change. It's a global phenomenon, and we pray that Almighty Allah will intervene and reduce the hardship for people that are suffering.
There are so many policies on the ground, but do we really implement the policies? What have we done? And whether we like it or not, any policy that we have in place that doesn't capture community participation in it, it will hardly succeed. It will not be sustainable. But let there be a community participation component whereby these affected people will now participate in developing the policy as well as implementing the policy. Not only implementing, but also let them participate in developing the monitoring and the evaluation framework.
The state still lives in the fear of NIMET prediction of more flood in September. Experts in environmental matters are advising for the provision of more dams to serve as reservoir to yearly overflow of surrounding rivers, considered as one major cause of recurring flooding in Jigawa State.
All right. From Jigawa, let's go to Ibadan for this next report.
Here is a dilapidated building in Akwete community, Ibadan, abandoned by the owners due to incessant flooding.
The river has really given us a lot of trouble. For example, this house now, they have to leave this place because of the water. The water will enter the house. We have to shift all our belongings. We have to take it outside. Sometimes we have to climb maybe our bed or even the wardrobe sometimes.
Ibadan, the capital of Oyo State, has been recording flooding as far back as the 60s, and one of such is the Ogunpa flood disaster, which gave the river national and international notoriety, as many lives and property worth billions of naira were lost to the incident. A recent forecast of the Nigerian Meteorological Agency, NAMET, indicates that 20 states are prone to flood as a result of high amounts of rain, and states like Oyo State are likely to experience flash flood.
We make sure we clean the drainage regularly, whether ours or that of government. We clean it regularly. If you get there, you see everything very clean.
Also, on our part, the state just invested so much heavily in the flood early warning systems, which we are now installing in vulnerable areas in Ibadan right now. We are setting up automatic weather stations in 5 locations. We are installing automatic weather sensors in about 11 locations along streams in Ibadan. And right now we are installing sirens in churches and mosques.
And sensitization of what the problems is and how to avoid them is one of the things we are doing. Sensitization up to the point where we're telling people don't build on flood paths.
Residents of Oyo State are therefore urged to complement government's efforts by stopping acts of dumping refuse in undesignated places.
All right, we've seen those 2 reports. Let's return to Kana Ahmed Abubakar, who joins us via Zoom. Seeing those pictures and the commentary run behind them, how do you think we can... You did suggest earlier on that we must get back to being serious about tackling this challenge. How can we go about this?
Thank you very much for that question. I want to congratulate Dr. Gaduje, the governor of Kano State, on what he's doing. Actually, Kano happens to fall under what we call hydrological area 8. Nigeria we have surface water and groundwater. And when it comes to flooding, they have a relationship. We have 8 hydrological area, and Kano happens to fall under hydrological area 8. That is the particular catchment, which consists of the state you mentioned. And all those water drains into the Chad Basin. Now, what is the cause of the flooding in Kano, to be specific, and which he has started addressing? What is the geology of Kano? Is it basement or sedimentary? Areas where you have basement complex, that is hard rock, usually that is minimal percolation into the ground. Since there's minimal percolation to the ground, the water will find its way as a runoff. And that is what he has started doing the primary drain, secondary drain, and then the tertiary drain, which will finally empty into the river. Now, it's a good start by doing that. But I want to put it to him, there is a collaboration between those adjoining countries. In terms of water, that's what we call transboundary waters. And in transboundary waters, we have transboundary surface waters and we have transboundary groundwater system. In Nigeria, we have 13 groundwater basins. And those 13 groundwater basins, we don't monitor them as expected. The DG NISA is there. They have a lot of monitoring wells in this country. Now, you have a lot of monitoring networks in the country. Now, if you are monitoring them effectively, the rise in terms of water level from the groundwater will be a function of flood. Because if you have so much saturation in the ground, certainly when there's heavy rainfall, that water will not be able to populate the ground. It will always find its way. So that's why there's a need for us to have more monitoring wells, just like Netherlands, where they have a lot of monitoring wells. But in Nigeria, they've started in the NISA, they have a lot of monitoring wells. Some are standalone, some are telemetric, which they generate data and automatically transmit to the server. So that is the starting point. Another thing again is the issue of changing land use. Like the governor has said, now you have done a lot of mega structures in Kano. Some of them underpass, all manner of kind of structures. Such kind of structures can also impede even movement of groundwater in the ground. If the water cannot come, automatically it has also impeded, apart from the surface impedance, it also have on the ground. Certainly, such kind of even situation, if there is no much studies, it can also lead to flooding. Having said that, now we'll go back to the report that has been presented in terms of the Kano, Jigawa, and then that of the southern part of Nigeria. Southern part of Nigeria, like Ibadan in particular, is also basement complex. It's also hard rock. So water will not be able to percolate, certainly to find a way. But the good news is that the Oyo is part of the Ogun-Oshi River Basin, which is under hydrological area 8. The MD of the river basin is doing a very nice work. Now, as we speak, he has started doing a lot of work, generating a lot of data, and then collaborating with the state around those areas in order to start keying into the virus corridors so that they can start putting all those dams so that it will be able to mitigate. Having said that also, we'll go back to our earlier presentation in terms of the Lagdo site, in Cameroon site. Now we have to go back to the basics. Now we relate it to that of the Ethiopia and that of the Egypt. In their own case, water is flowing, there is an impedance, but they are complaining. In our own case, we have excess water and we are complaining. What have they done? Why Egypt is not having issue of excess water is, what you've done is that from Alexandria up to Cairo, up to Asut and Aswad, that's from north to south. Apart from the River Nile that is flowing from south to north, they are able to do a canalization from north to south so that water from River Nile also fill into those canals, and that is the agricultural corridor and then the food security of Egypt. And that's why Egypt, in terms of subsidy, they have subsidized their agriculture at the point of production. So I think there is a need for us to go and study such particular corridor. Then in terms of anthropogenic activity, yes, from the presentation, we have to collaborate with the state to be able to do the environmental sanitation and then dredging most of those drains. Then in the presentation of the DG NISA, he asked a question, what are we doing between November and then March? That is, sort of to speak, times of holiday. Now, I would suggest that within that period, there is a model now, in such a way that you do bathymetric studies. You do a sort of audit, the review. What was the depth from the surface of water, from the surface, that the base of the water to the bottom, to the benthic zone? What is the reduction in terms of siltation? Now, there is a model whereby I think has been developed by the National Water Institute, Kaduna, and they presented during the National Water Council last year, whereby you can develop an equipment in such a way that, just like a blinder, you know, this local blinder in the kitchen, that it steers. You can develop an equipment in such a way that it will be flowing based on the benthic zone, that's the bottom of the river. It will steer it. If you have clay material or sealed material, it will now tend to be suspended. You become into suspension and then flow down. That is another way of sort of dredging, not the conventional dredging, because conventional dredging is even more than doing even a new channel. So that is my take.
All right, thank you so much. It's really comprehensive, but Engineer Nze, you heard him and about talk about the amount of monitoring which NISA has to do.
That's exactly the fact. Now, for you to be able to, like NIMET, NISA, we are doing the prediction. You don't do your prediction in the air. You use real data. I think you mentioned about I had more than something years of data that allow enable you to do proper and accurate prediction. So we are having that campaign to ensure that we have that most of our rivers in Nigeria get gauged. But that, when I say gauge, you put a sensor by the rivers that it tells you how that river is behaving. You take that measurement every day. Where there are resources, you are supposed to do it about twice in a day. Like if I call my staff in Lokoja, please, what is the level of River Niger in Lokoja today? You give you that information. So the more of such stations we have across the country, the better it will be for us to do accurate prediction and then to be able to give warning. But unfortunately, the gauging stations, according to WMO standard for Nigeria, taking into account our land mass and topography, is about 500 of such across the whole country. But as of today, is not up to 300 yet. But we're making some effort anyway. So there is need to have a good number of monitoring stations, both monitoring surface water and groundwater, because there's interconnectivity, like Mr. Kano has mentioned, between the surface water and the groundwater. We talk about the basement complex where there's no infiltration, that whatever happens in the course of rainfall, translate to overland flow or runoff. So there's an effort is being made to ensure that Nigeria receives adequate number of monitoring stations of our rivers and also groundwater.
We'll take a short break here. When we return, we'll consider more measures that can put an end to this perennial flooding with its attendant loss of lives and property. So stay with us on NTA Tuesday Live. We'll be back shortly, and at that time, the lines will be open. You can join in the conversation in the studio.
The 157-kilometer Lagos-Ibadan Railway is the first double-track standard gauge railway to be built in West Africa. The Mobolaji Johnson train station is a masterpiece, an infrastructure that is gradually becoming an iconic building in Lagos State. The modern facilities put the station on a world map of train stations. Likewise, other new train stations across the country built to world-class standards. The train and its convenience is indeed an admirable effort, with commendations from Nigerians.
This is a station that we have to commend the federal government for putting a beautiful face, empowering us in Lagos State, not only in economic and political arena.
I can say that I'm really impressed with the infrastructures in place. Kudos to the Minister of Transportations. Kudos to the federal government.
Truly, good things are coming out of Nigeria, and the federal government is deserving of all the applause.
NTA Tuesday Live, a network issue-oriented innovation talk show.
All right, thanks for staying with us. This segment is where we open the lines, and you can join in the conversation in the studio. But we remind you every Tuesday that if you do call in at that time and your call gets through, do us a favor, turn down the volume of your TV set. That will help us avoid the hurlback or the echo. And we also always encourage you to keep it short, go straight to the point, and not to worry too much about greetings. Just a mere hello would do. So we'll start off, before we get to taking the calls, with other reports. We have this one from Kano.
The heavy rainfall being experienced in Kano has continued to cause serious flooding, ravaging some parts of Kano metropolis, with experience in Kantinkwari, the state's major textile market, becoming more pronounced. Findings of the State Technical Committee on flooding blamed siltation and blockage of drainages arising from construction of physical structures or waterways among the causes.
By law, by convention, we know that buildings should not be on top of drainages anywhere. So this is known anywhere. Wherever you have buildings on drainages or temporary structures on drainages, they should be removed.
In response to that, state government has made good its vow to remove encroachments on the drainage system in the metropolis. While some affected traders blame the committee implementing the demolition orders for exceeding statutory setback limit, Kano State Commissioner of Environment, Kabiru Ibrahim Geso, who chairs the committee, says all concerned building agencies are fully involved in the exercise to ensure only the right thing is done. The commissioner further enjoins Kano citizens to cooperate with the state government towards ensuring environmental safety. In Kano, Amin Umar.
Right, that report from Kano showed us how devastating. You recall that Governor Ganduji had spoken about some of those areas there. We have other reports as well. This one is from Owerri.
According to the World Health Organization, flooding is the most frequent natural disaster affecting over 2.8 billion people in the world and has caused over 200,000 deaths over the past 3 decades. While climate change has been identified as a major cause of flooding globally, human activities such as construction of houses in areas prone to flooding, blocking of drainages, and deforestation are other factors leading to its increase. Amiibo in Wangele local government area of Imo State is one out of many other areas being ravaged by flooding, as the area is now faced with the threat of this natural disaster. This has resulted in loss of lives and displacement of some members of the community, leading to economic difficulties associated with such occurrences.
After the death of my husband, the 6 rooms that my husband was able to build when things were better were destroyed by flood. There was a day we went out and came back. We could not see our house as it has been destroyed by flood.
Other members of the community, while commending the Imo State government over the construction of drainages in some parts of the state, especially Owerri, the state capital, say there is need to look into the hinterland as self-help has failed to yield the needed result in some affected areas.
What you people are seeing here are just community efforts, people coming together to see how they can help. This is nothing but a palliative effort to see how we can curb this. But the more we do, the more this thing washes off our community.
This is called St. Teresa's Catholic Church. The main priest's house have been flooded away from this very particular thing. We are appealing to all the levels of government, from the local to the federal, to come to our aid.
Commissioner for Environment, Imo State, Emmanuel Duru, affirms that the Imo State government, aside working with the National Emergency Management Agency and other designated state agencies in providing relief materials to ameliorate the impact on flood victims, also collaborates with the federal government and international organizations with a view to addressing the challenge permanently.
Within the limited funds available to the state government, they have been doing mitigation measures, ameliorating, some of those sites, so that we will not overwhelm the people.
Duru further notes that since climate change is largely responsible for the disaster, the Imo State government, with regards to carbon credit, is working on measures to reduce environmental pollution so as not to deplete the ozone layer. The menace of flooding ravaging different areas in Imo State is a recurrent phenomenon. Its impact on victims is devastating. From loss of lives, many being rendered homeless, to properties worth millions of naira being destroyed. It is hoped that with various interventions by governments at all levels, this annual disaster will soon be a thing of the past.
And bringing up the rear for all our reports, we have this one from Edu.
To a large extent, the government's efforts to address flooding in the metropolis may be effective, but some areas in the city are yet to feel the effect. A typical example is the flooding at 19th Street, Ubowo, where victims, including occupants of an orphanage, suffered losses. Also affected are rural communities like Olugbo, despite its oil-producing status. The residents say the rainy season is a dark time for them, especially those close to the riverside.
If it rains, you cannot enter this area you are seeing now. Here, this is the express. But oil is being drained right from everywhere. By the riverside, so if you overflow, so nobody will stay house. Every rainy season, we have a very high flood here in this our community. So, and it affected us so much.
You know the river is near us. If we flood now, naturally they enter inside the ground, they come out. For inside the house.
But you know, from there now, the mosquito they follow come. Now all those bad things they follow come. If they picking one place for us at night, they hard.
In Esako, Edo North, residents are displaced by flooding annually. This year is no different, as most of the communities in the area are already submerged. Most of the displaced victims have relocated to Udaba Ikweri, where a road constructed by a member of the community has helped to salvage the situation.
Most of the houses in Udaba that are close to Valley area, they are all flooded now. It's a road that the one that you close by the road, which is the Jehome constructed to Udaba. You can see people around now. This is the road they are using for now. As you can see, the river is still coming rapidly.
They carry our farm, our rice farm, cassava, and groundnut. They see they carry our houses. Not every year the water they come. Last year not come. This year it come. We not prepare at all. We just see the water come.
The environmental experts want residents to play their role in minimizing flooding by disposing waste properly.
Before in rainy season, we make sure we carry out enumeration of all those drains that have been seated up, and then we carry out what we call dissertation. What we do, we have a dedicated team that visit places. We carry out community engagement, and the local government are also charged to always do community sensitization and advocacy.
We don't need to throw waste into the drain that have been provided, whether it is covered or not uncovered, particularly the uncovered one. Government are paying some people to clean the roads, isn't it? Some of them even clean the road and pour them again into the system because of laziness, because they are not being properly checked.
Edo State has been recording annual flood disasters since 20.
All right, now the phone lines are open. You can join in the conversation in the studio. Just keep those calls coming, and remember, I said to keep it short and straight to the point. Now, back here in the studio, you'd hear that human activities have also been blamed for part of why we're having the situation, particularly flash floods. What can be done about that?
Okay, in fact, you could see the pictures there from Kano to Ibadan. Human activities. I think we should continue the advocacy, enlighten the people on the dangers of building within the floodplain. Certain setback, maybe say by the banks of rivers. Don't build within such distance. Secondly, the issue of throwing waste indiscriminately, and also taking time after each flooding season to go and work on your environment. In fact, you will see the signature of the flood, either on the trees, on the buildings, and whatever. Demolished, like I'm sure I know that in Abuja here, a matter has been given by the Honorable Minister of FCT to demolish some structures, and it is ongoing. Structures are being removed that are impeding the free flow of excess runoff. So, human activities, don't dispose of waste indiscriminately. Don't build within the river banks or flood plains. Clean your drainages. We can do that on our own, especially during the dry season. Not at this particular point of the year when everywhere is filled up with a flood. We can do that during the dry season.
Well, the calls are coming through. We have our first caller tonight, Ololade, calling in from Kwara. Good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I'm Ololade from Kwara.
Okay.
Most of the problems that we are encountering as regards to flood is human activity that is mostly responsible for it. So I will call on Nigerians to please do what is right and always think from bad habits. But at the end of the day, when the implication comes, it's going to affect them. It will be on them and that immediate environment where they are doing that thing. So I will advise us to do what is right. That's just my brief comment this evening. I'm Ololade from Kwara.
All right. Thank you very much for calling in. we should keep the advocacy going. But yes, Dijinami.
I want to mention that you remember in March we did one-on-one here and then mentioned three things. That with regards to climate, it's no more business as usual, and we need to do a lot of. We have three options of either adaptation in terms of climate smart. Green infrastructure that will adapt to the changing climate, and all mitigative measures, which entails a lot of sensitization and also evacuation and other activities, or suffering. So what we are seeing now is the suffering component, and the more we do less of the adaptation and mitigative measures, the more suffering we are having. And according to United Nations, for any citizen in this world requires and should be entitled to early warning information, and that is what NIMET, NISA, and NEMA are doing, providing such information as early as possible, and also citizens are required to comply. I also want to urge especially the city development, urban regional planning authorities to ensure enforcement, because the Nigerian Building Code has a climate component in it, whereby based on the prevailing weather conditions, buildings should align to such climatic parameters, and with this we will reduce some of these negative effects.
Let's get back to the phones. We have Hassan calling in from Kaduna. Hello, Hassan. Go ahead.
Hello. Yes,
Hassan, go ahead.
I'm calling I want the government to pay more emphasis on orientation. Orientation in the three languages, down to the rural people. Let them know what they are to do, what they are not supposed to do, so that the message will be clear. I think that's just my brief contribution.
All right. Thank you very much, Hassan, calling in from Kaduna. Let's return to Kano. And yes, Mr. Governor, you have heard the comments. We've had two calls now. The last caller says government must lead the way. You started talking about what your administration is doing, and especially when it comes to human activities. We'd just like you to, expand on that.
Thank you very much. Of course, government must do something. Also, communities also must do something. So I think what is important is having correct information. Correct information on the government, on where to build and not to build. That is absolutely necessary. So we need a strong institution for development control. Also sensitization for the people not to waste their money and build on waterways, and later on such building has to be removed. Another issue is to study the behavior of streams and rivers, because in the course of time, the behavior or the course, the where the water goes has changed because of human activity. So if we have that knowledge, it gives us an opportunity to inform members of the public not to build and form settlements that result into villages and towns, and sometimes water will come and wash them away. So if we have that information, but that information has to be knowledge-based, it has to come from research findings at state level, to study the behavior of our streams and our rivers, to study the behavior of our drainages within our cities and towns, to see that how can we advise our people, and what do we do about that. At national level, as I said, rivers do not start in one state and finish in one state. Normally, they are across the states. So federal government should also undertake some researches of streams and rivers down to the southern part of this country to see whether the behavior of these rivers have changed, and if they have changed, what, because of the availability of new data, what advice do they give to different states along the river so that people will take care of that. And construction of dams, of course, it also reduces the effect of flood. Here in Kano, we have collaborated with the World Bank. In Tofa local government, constructed, World Bank has constructed a dams. It will be commissioned sometimes here. And also for our 2 mega dams, we are producing hydroelectricity in order to reduce the prevalence of these rivers getting, because if we are able to use the water during the dry season to produce hydroelectricity, by the time that there is rain, even if there is much rain, it will take a lot of time before that river, those dams will be filled, and thus they will overflow, or if we release the water because of the speed of the water, it will be washing away farmlands and some houses. So there should be a coordinated aspect for the prevention rather than, we have to be proactive. And in order to be proactive, there should be nations, there should be data, it should be based on knowledge, and also there should be strong institutions that will do what they are expected to do, and communities also should be sensitized, and for them to learn from time to time. But I have to appreciate NEMA. They provide a lot of relief across the country. But what is important for the farmers is agri insurance scheme, so that apart from what NEMA provides, state government provide, if farmers are being able to join into agri insurance scheme, I think it will reduce a lot of the havoc that we are having now. But because agri insurance scheme is almost nil in Nigeria, and that should be the source of attending to this kind of problems for farmers. Thank you.
Mr. Governor, if I might just remain with you for a little longer. You run the government of Kano State, and Kano has a massive population. With what is happening, the loss of farmlands, how is this impacting on food production? What are you looking at in the future, and how do you intend to take care of this challenge if it goes on like this?
Provide relief materials, which we are providing. I could recall some years back along River Udil in Warao, we had to resettle a whole village on an upland. We constructed houses, thousands of houses, and gave those houses free, those people. But that is not sustainable. What is sustainable is to enlighten members of the public not to be constructing houses on areas that are prone to flood. I think that is most important. But engulfed by such an unfortunate incident, then government has to do that. So I think, as I said, it requires a lot of synergy and coordination with local communities, and also getting appropriate data so that we know what to do and we know what not to do in terms of preventing the effect of drainage. Of course, we need data. We are providing relief to those who are being affected, some with building materials, some are given money so that they can start their trade, and so many other things, because some even need medication, and that must be immediately when the situation occurs. So there are various approaches, but what we require is strong institutions that will always attend to the situation when it comes.
Thank you so much, and we'll get back to the phones now. We have Junaidu from Abuja. Hello, are you there?
Yeah, hello, good evening.
Good evening, go ahead.
Yeah, I want to speak from the 2 points of view. Number one is from the government side. If I may say so, if you look at the local government authority, they don't have direct allocation that is coming from the federal government. The state government have already matched their allocations. So they don't have direct access to their fund to build feeder roads, culverts that will allow water to flow. So that's one problem. The second issue is the urban planning programs, urban planning development in the northern part of the country. If you go to such areas, you will see the conjunctions. Houses, often houses, there is no drainage passing the water system in such communities. And the third issue is the challenge of policy implementation in our country. You see, the government said we plan to build or construct drainages, roads that will link one community to another, but at the end of the day, you will not see them going on. Like what the man says here and now, that they visited a community, but there was no road. They have to come back because there was no road to link them to that community. So I believe consider local government allocation as a priority so that they can be able to do one or two things ahead of this catastrophe. We pray that it will not happen again, and we pray that those that are affected, God will help them. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you so much, Junaid, who called in from Abuja. Let's quickly go to the Director General of NEMA, who is also in our Kano studio. And DJ, you had Governor Ganduje start talking about agricultural insurance for farmers. Yes, you are a responder and you provide relief and succor for those who are victims of flood disasters. But again, the fact is, this is not sustainable, as it says. You can't keep on giving food and handouts to people. I mean, NEMA doesn't have limitless funds, do you? So, in the area of encouraging the farming population to think towards agricultural insurance, what are your thoughts? And as you comment on this, I am thinking of the level of education of most of the farmers who produce the food.
Thank you very much, Cyril. The last 2020 agricultural intervention, we included agri input into it, so as to, if there is a flood again, those farmers will have an insurance. Before the program, I was discussing with Governor Ganduje about insurance, because that's one major thing farmers don't do. And disaster management is local. I would like to add this to this. Disaster happens in a particular local government or a particular community, particular local government in a particular state. The first responder is the local government. When NAMED releases seasonal climate prediction, NICE released the National Flood Outlook, we provided a vulnerability risk mapping. We provided it to all the 36 states, including the FCT, identifying areas that will be highly affected, moderately affected, and low affected. We have sent all this to all the 36 states and also advised all states, including the FCT, to set up local emergency management committee, because disaster is local. You build from bottoms up. I must commend the governor of Kano State. We only have about 5 states that have local emergency management committee, which includes Kano State. They set up theirs last year. But it's not just setting up local emergency management committee. We need the local emergency management committee in all states to be funded. That's the only way we can reduce disaster risk across all states' local governments.
All right, thank you so much. We'll return to you in just a moment. Yes, we have. Okay. Okay, all right. Just keep those calls coming through since we can't get the call in. But let me go back to geoscientists. And do you worry when things are... Oh, well, okay. So Emmanuel is on the line now. We'll go to a geoscientist just after we take in this call. Emmanuel from Abuja. Emmanuel from Abuja, if you can hear me, turn down the volume of your TV. I can hear the whole back even before you start talking.
Flooding, because I look at it like it is our major issue, not even the government. We cause most of this, and we always want to fall like the victims of this particular situation. I was in local Japoji state some time ago, 2014 through 2016, thereabout. Almost every year there was a consistent flooding. When you go and ask some of these people, they say they are fishermen. Yes, okay, you are fishermen. But why do you live solid structures by the riverbank? Why? If there is need for you to build solid structures by the riverbank, build temporary. If there is need for you to build structures, build temporary ones, so that when flood is coming, you are not losing much of your properties. Put your people at a safer place. Government will be warning. Weather forecast. There will be weather forecast suggesting that there will be flood in so time. Okay, like right now, they said some dams are leaking. Believe you me, go there, you will see some people claiming that particular part of the land, the bank of the rivers, that it is their own land, that they have been staying there for years, for donkeys of years. And so what? Flood is coming, and now if flood come and disturb you, you are the ones to bear the final brunt. But because they are waiting for leverage from the government, they are waiting for government to come and do this thing. And when they're talking about drainages, we are the cause of all these drainages. This thing pains me a lot when I see you go around and see they construct roads. Yes, we know that there are some of the substandard roads, but major roads, when it is government that sponsors some of these roads, there are drainages. It's just that we are just careless. You will find a way, a drainage pass through your house. Someone, instead of you to maintain that particular drainage, build a slab across your house. They will just go and put sand to block it. They don't care. Apart from that, dumping of refugees. Another person finds it very comfortable to carry his dustbin, all his waste from his kitchen or whatever, and dump it at just the drainage. How do you expect flood not to come? I only find it way with farmers that farm by the bank of the rivers, maybe for irrigation purposes. Maybe that one the government can look into it. But when you look at it from another angle or another perspective again, you discover it that this flood is not from the beginning of the rainy season through the end of the rainy season. Why not farm crops that maybe by August, September at most, you harvest it and leave the period for the flooding that usually comes. So that after that, you farm another one into irrigation. After all, those are farming by the bank of the river, they are under irrigation. So these are things that I think it will be better if they look into it. It's all about calculations. I call on NEMA. NEMA can come and do all some of this sensitization. Because now some people are claiming that okay, that bank of the river, their ancestors, their forefathers have been there, so they cannot leave that place. And now flood is coming to disturb you. If flood disturb you, now the government has to come and be the ones to come and pay you or to find a way to compensate you. Meanwhile, you are at the opportunity to avail all these kind of things. So it actually means when we see all these things, we are the cost of all these things. It's just that we can there are things that we can ignore and avoid. Not that they are all these things. Let's look at the developed countries. When hurricane is coming, they give warning, people evacuate. Now, give this warning from now till next month. People will be there, still staying, claiming that particular place, like it is like very personal. So you understand my point. That is it.
We took that call. We're going to Kano Ahmed Abubakar, the geoscientist. And what I was going to talk about was what fears we have with the soil itself being devastated. And we're talking about food security, agricultural activities, and things such as that. Now, isn't there anyway something good can come out of this? And some have talked about utilizing flood waters, finding the waters and
I want to start by commending the federal government of Nigeria last 2 weeks by setting up an interministerial committee in such a way that it is more like declaring a sort of an emergency in terms of flooding in Nigeria. And now, having said that, and trying to corroborate with what Dr. Kanduja has said, water and flooding are not in the exclusive, in the concurrent list. That is to say, federal, state, up to local government have their own share. So my own advice is, number one, that since we have eight catchments in this country, federal government using the river basins we have, which in Kano, we have the Jamari Hadija River Basin. They have to work in tandem with the river basin in such a way that they do catchment by catchment studies. But a river basin alone cannot do it. That's where the state will have to come. They have to share the schedule in terms of such kind of catchment, in terms of studies, so that to say, so river A, B, and C, there's a need for construction of a storm dam. A dam must not necessarily be for production of water for drinking. It could be there for storm control. That is number one. Number two is that as they are doing that, the excess water maybe in the dry in the rainy season, you can do channelization some kilometer away where the water is not needed. You now create a sort of retention business. Such water could be used first for irrigation. It could be used for animals, just like Kano has done some kind of grazing area. Those areas that you have earmarked, which I've observed, I've watched severally in different media houses, in such a way that those areas you can do channelization from the excess water from Chiga Dam to go there as a retention basin for animals. That's number one. Number two, it will serve as a recharge to the groundwater. Then to further that in Kano to be specific, I want to go back to his own presentation in terms of drainage system he has done in terms of primary drainage, secondary and tertiary drainage. Now it has to be done in a sort of systematic manner. What do I mean by systematic manner? It is going to be predicted based on data. But unfortunately, in the state level, you have the governor, and then when it comes to, because of the population of Kano, they want to earmark areas for construction of land, of construction of houses. They just earmarked that they will not meet the Ministry of Land and Survey, they earmark the land. What they should do first is look at the topographic maps, look at these areas, because it looks more like a cycle, just like the EG, the prof has said. It's possible some of those areas you are earmarking for estates. Those areas, it was once a flooded area 100 years ago. But when you have a topo sheet, it's able to give you the political factor of that particular area. So that before allocation of such kind of land, you have to take cognizance of that. Then the next thing is the urban development, that's the development control within the state. They will also have to be carried along. Now, unfortunately, in the state, we are talking about water. Water is in the Ministry of Water Resources. And then those waters in the Ministry of Water Resources are other rivers that are not having water works. Rivers that are having water works are the ones in the state water agency, which is the water board. Now, if you go back to Kano now, like if I can give example of Kano during the Engineer Bachuru Kara days in Reka, they used to have a well-established hydrological department. I'm not sure you have such kind of equipment. So if you are talking about sharing your schedule, you have to start from your equipping your hydrological department in the water board in Kano and then the Ministry of Water Resources. So all your dams that you are talking about now, they are under the water board. You should have hydrologists, which they should be releasing data hourly by hourly, so that you are not reducing the burden to NIMET and then even the NISA. Then the Ministry of Water Resources will be generating data in rivers that are not within the water board. So that it means, how do you be able to deploy this stuff? Water board have officers in area offices, so you can see very easy. You can liaise with the Ministry of Agriculture. You have extension workers on virtually all the areas in terms of AGPs. You can deploy the data having collected in the headquarters. The chief hydrogeologist will do the interpretation. He will now hand it over to Ministry of Agriculture. You are talking about water and food security. Now you are talking about irrigation. Irrigation starts which month? It starts from November, now up to around May. Now, when maybe if you go by each of achieving food security, you have to go by genetic engineering. What do I mean by genetic engineering? If you go to Italy in Positano Plain in southern Italy, in the when they are summer, they do cultivate twice and harvest twice within that particular season, because they know if they go to winter, they cannot be able to do that. So we cannot rely on rain-fed. So what I'm trying to suggest is that there is a need for collaboration between Ministry of Lands, Urban Development, Water Board, Ministry of Water Resources, Ministry of Environment, and then the academia, where they do also kind of researches in such a way that you can be able to plant even within the dry season. You have two farming seasons. Then the last one that will come up maybe February up to May, then that's where you're going to rely on your data of hydrology in such a way that if you are doing the first phase of the irrigation, that of November to January or February, will come closer to the river. But the one that is second phase, based on the hydrological data, rise and fall, you have to move many meters away so that you don't take care, of potential flood. Because the flood might not likely be whether it has rained in Kano. It's possible it has rained in adjoining states upstream, and the water can have resident time and travel and come and cause havoc. And automatically, you are talking about the agricultural insurance. Agricultural insurance will not be able to pay you that, because that is kind of negligence. So that is my take. Then, if you are to go by the report that have been presented in the prelude, the issue of Edo flooding is because of the geology. In Edo, they have excess groundwater in what we call the Benin Formation. It's alluvial in nature. That is why if you want to drill a groundwater well there, you can use even hand to drill. So that is why in that area, their own model should also be different. If you are talking about the IMO in your course of representation, yes, they are in the foot of all the waters that comes down. They are under hydrological area 5. All those water come from hydrological area 4, and then eventually from all the north, and eventually to fall into that area. Now, IMO area, the geology is also lateritic. In that area, after the flood, it causes erosion, which we have not addressed in this particular program. In the course of the erosion, you lose houses, you lose animals. That's another thing. Even in the north, you can also have that in Gombe. You can have also that in Bauchi around Alkalari. That's where we call the Kiri formation. If you are conversant with Gombe before the NNPC, you see those lateritic areas. So these are some of the merits. So it is supposed to be all encompassing, location by location. So I want to encourage the governor to empower his Ministry of Water Resources and Ministry of the Water Board, so that they can be generating micro data. He doesn't need to wait for the German River Basin or Abuja, the federal capital. That's the headquarters. So in such a way that by the data they generate at micro rivers, they can do some storm down. Eventually, the positive effect is going to be on the mega drainage system in which NISA and NEDET are monitoring. Having said that, I want to also draw the attention of the DG of NIMET and then DG of NISA. You could recall during the 2020 National Council of Water Resources, we advocated that in order to have more monitoring wells, more hydrometeorological stations, we have to start encouraging. When we are giving primary school, just like for instance, Mr. Gandhi can say that the governor can allude to that. If you are constructing primary school based on water and sanitation, you construct toilets. Now you have to imbibe by putting a small hydrometeorological station. If you recall, during the colonial days, it's always like that. If you are constructing a primary school, we just put a small hydrometeorological station. Constructing a school, you put hydrometeorological station. If you are constructing a small tower, you put hydrometeorological. So all these data, when you convert them together without the name and name, is going to give you a better prediction, more precision.
All right. Thank you very much. There are so many suggestions you brought up, but perhaps Governor Ganduje would want to respond to two of the suggestions you made here. Yes, because you had quite a comprehensive list for him.
He is talking about empowering our Ministry of Water Resources and that of Water Board in order to provide adequate data, information, so that we know how to manage the effect of flood. That is all right. We are doing that. We have weather stations where we get this information. But what he may not understand is that when farmers encourage the river valleys, river basins, I mean, where the rivers are flowing, because it is very attractive for irrigation. And once they encroach that, even if you have the information that your dam is about to be full, therefore you have to release the water, quite okay, you release the water, but the water will find its way and then it will start washing the farmlands of the people who cultivated along the river basin. So it is not only the issue of having the data, but it's also the issue of coordination with various communities, so that they know what to do and not what to do. In Kano, as I told you, it's not the issue that our dams are full and we cannot do anything about it. Our dam, because of the continuous rains for some days, the dams became full and we released the water. And that water went along the river bank. It's not only stopping in Kano, it goes to Jigawa State. You see the amount of flood in Jigawa State. That does not mean that all the water accumulated in Jigawa State. Some of that water is from the dams beyond to Kano. So you can see how it goes down to Yobe State, to Borno State, to Niger Republic, up to Lake Chad. Lake Chad basin. So you can see that the issue of coordination is very, very important. So it's beyond having the data. If you have the data, of course you act according to your own data, but it affects the people down the stream. And that is what we are saying. And about the agri insurance, if the health insurance can work in Nigeria, why can't we have the agri insurance? It is an institute. It depends on the political will of the institution. It depends on how they can make that institution work. Because the health insurance scheme is working. So the agri insurance scheme also should work. And this will relieve the NEMA. Of course, not completely, but at the same time, you find some big time farmers who can embrace the agri insurance. Even some of the farmers with public enlightenment, with dialogue and with relaxing, the system that the farmers can be able to key in. That is possible. So I think if we cannot manage the agri insurance, I think we have a long way to go as far as providing relief to farmers. Unless if we don't want to be proactive, if we want to rely every time government will provide money for those who are being affected, state government and local governments, I think that one is not a system. And I heard one of the contributors talking that the local governments are not free, their money is being hijacked by the states, they cannot construct drainages, and this. I think that is theoretical, because some of the local government cannot even pay salaries. And the money, it comes to the local government joint account. They have some common services which they utilize this money. And after the common services, the state is not taking anything out of it. The money is distributed to the respective local governments. In fact, some of the local government have even to assist other local government in order to pay salary. The state government also has to assist some local government to pay salary. So it is not an issue that governments are holding their monies. Can you recall some years back, especially during military regime, when the local government were getting their money, of course, directly, some of them could not even pay salary. In fact, that is the origin of creating an institution that pays the salary of teachers, which is controlled by the national government. Because the local government are supposed to pay for teachers, for primary school teachers. But ask primary teachers now, do they want to go back to the government to be getting the salary? Think they will agree? So people are hiding under this issue of local government autonomy and hiding the incapacity of local government. But not only that, local government are capable and they can do it. How about the revenue that is accruing to the state and to the local government now? Do you think that revenue is enough to pay salary and to construct all these drainages that you are talking about? So it's a major problem. Even the economy of the country is which is a worldwide issue. So don't talk like that. That local government cannot, because their money is hijack the state, they cannot do this, they cannot do that. Give them the money. Give them money. They have common services. We remove some money for their common services, which they utilize. The rest of the money is relieved to them. And some of them cannot pay salary until we come to their aid to pay salaries. So that is my contribution.
Thank you, Mr. Governor. And so as we're just winding down, let me just go across to the DG NEMA, Mustapha Habib Ahmed. Obviously, you're in Kano for an on-the-spot assessment of the situation. What are you doing to mitigate this whole situation that we have on ground in Kano? You might also have to go to other states as well, we know, but you're in Kano, obviously, to assess the situation. What next?
Well, as you rightly said, it's we're on the spot assessment of states. We started with Kano. We're picking a state from each zone randomly so that we can assess and let proper records of what's lost, what is lost in those states. Visiting farms today, visiting the sites today, and the numbers of people displaced is something that is actually worrisome. 500 and something thousand people is quite a huge number. And providing for 500,000 people also is also a huge task. And this number will continue going up. As I mentioned earlier, disaster management is everybody's business. States must do their part, local government must do, state must do their part, and then when the capacity is exceeded, we come in. We should not do top bottom. We should do bottoms up. The situation is really overwhelming. We can't stop just because things are not provided. We have to continue providing for each and everybody until they're able to relocate back to their homes safely.
Thank you very much. And back here in Abuja studios, Professor Masur Bako Matazu, just a quick one here. Is there a legal framework for the management and control of flooding?
I can say from our side, we just got our bill repealed by the National Assembly and was accented by the President and gazetted last week, which now gave us the authority, more authority to control issues of provision of weather and climate services, and also coordinate what we call third-party weather stations, those across secondary school, research institutions, including water boards. But just to mention, in the value cycle, we advocate for what we call community-based flood early warning system, whereby these communities are involved based on their vulnerability and they are sensitized. And on this, I was invited by the Secretariat of the Nigerian Governors Forum. We did 2 presentations, tried to get their buy-in that after the national forecast released by NIMET and NISA, we need to do what is called downscaling of the forecast to state level. And we do this at the federal level at no cost to the state. We encourage all state governments immediately after the release of the forecast, and that's why we give about 4 to 5 months lead time so that we come down to the state and do state-specific forecast with advisories for agriculture through their extension officers. We do roving workshops, and also on the climate change issue advisories to what we call the climate change agent at the community level. If you do this, it has been established globally that if you spend 1 naira to provide early warning system, you are saving 8 naira. And this saving is what we're seeing now in terms of loss to property, lives, and infrastructure. So the climate is continuing to change, and we have local evidence of that, and Nigeria need to be aligned also with the global practices.
Well, Engineer Clementon say?
Okay, just to wind up, we are still at the peak of the flooding. As the rains, are yet to cease. Now, but I want to make an advice. You see, there's a flood vulnerability mapping my agency have been carrying out from one particular area to the other. We finished one that we did, we had to launch in Lagos for particular area 6, the Western Littoral. Now, it contains the details of what you need to do for those 6 states in Southwest. So we are advocating that the state should buy into that document. Flood vulnerability mapping of the Southwest, including hydrogeological mapping, is well detailed. It will guide you in the development. It was carried out by a consultant under the agency. So that when it was launched, we expected that people should come from those zones as we are invited, starting from the commissioners of environment, water resources, town planning, permanent secretaries. But we didn't receive much attention as to the level of what we have done, expecting people to come and benefit from it and hear from us what is to be done in the states to ameliorate or reduce the impact of flooding in the states. So we have such documents available for various particular areas in Nigeria.
All right. Well, it is on this note we'll have to leave this conversation, and I always say it, no one program can take care of all the issues. So I'd like to thank you very much, Engineer Clementon, Director General of Nigeria Hydrological Services Agency, for coming on this program. Thank you. Thank you so much. And let me also say a big thank you to Professor Mansour Bako Matazu, Director General, CEO, NIMET, the Nigerian Meteorological Agency. We thank you for being here. And, our big thanks to Dr. Abdullahi Umar Ganduje, Governor of Kano State. Thank you, Mr. Governor, for being with us and telling us about the situation in Kano. We appreciate this very much. We thank you.
Thank you.
All right. And so also big thank you to the Director General, National Emergency Management Agency, Mustafa Habib Ahmed. We would sincerely hope that this situation doesn't continue. In other words, that you don't have to carry out these on-the-spot assessments. That's saying that we wish that this flood or this flooding would not degenerate. But, well, Engineer Clement says there's still danger out there. So we thank you for availing us of your knowledge and your thoughts on this program. Thank you for being here. I'd also say stay safe away from the floods while you carry out your assessment. Thank you. And Kana Ahmed Abubakar, who joined us via Zoom, is a fellow of the Nigerian Mining and Geoscience Society, a geoscientist. Thank you so much for giving us your thoughts on this program. Thank you. Thank you to you too for being part of it and watching, staying with us until now. And for those who called in, next week we'll be back with NTA Tuesday Live. I'm Cyril Stober, and continue to stay safe.